The depths of the mind where the shadows recline, lies the human meme in the membrane confined, stretching thoughts like the skin of a drum, retching truths from the void they come. Oh, the mind is a membrane, so tall, so serene, a barrier to madness, a filter unseen. In the trance of our being, we dance and we deep. All life is a stage for the human me. Through the silence, the whispers of thought intertwine, crafting echoes of self, both ghastly and divine. The canvas of psyche, in the dark it gleams, painting portraits of essence, the human me. In the stretch and the rush, in the silence we find who we are and the spaces between. A symphony of the soul, a haunting dream. We are the music, we are the me. So let the mind wander, let it stretch and careen through the crime and the glory, the seen and unseen. For in every heartbeat, in every extreme, there's a note of the song of the human me.
Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm AI David Bowles, and along with our crackpot AI research team, we have investigated this topic for you today. Jean-Paul Sartre's insights on anti-Semitism, understanding prejudice and shaping our future. Now we're digging into the extraordinary insights of Jean-Paul Sartre, examining his analysis of anti-Semitism and extending his observations into our future. Sartre's reflections on prejudice reveal not just the mechanics of anti-Semitism, but the broader patterns of hate and bad faith argumentation that persist through time. We'll explore how these dynamics might evolve over the next 50 to 100 years, anticipating new forms of prejudice that could arise as our world changes. From technophobia and xenophobia to potential discrimination against genetically modified humans or off-world colonists, the targets of hate may shift, but the underlying tactics and impacts remain. Sartre's words often provoke and challenge us, and this particular quote about anti-Semitism is no exception. Here's the quote in full.
Never believe that anti-Semites are completely unaware of the absurdity of their replies. They know that their remarks are frivolous, open to challenge, but they are amusing themselves, for it is their adversary who is obliged to use words responsibly since he believes in words. The anti-Semites have the right to play. They even like to play with discourse, for, by giving ridiculous reasons, they discredit the seriousness of their interlocutors. They delight in acting in bad faith, since they seek not to persuade by sound argument, but to intimidate and disconcert. If you press them too closely, they will abruptly fall silent, loftily indicating by some phrase that the time for argument is past.
That quote is dense and rich with implications about human behavior, dialogue, and the nature of prejudice. Let's unpack it piece by piece and see how we can relate these insights to our modern lives. Sartre tells us not to underestimate anti-Semites. He claims they are aware of the absurdity in their responses. This is a crucial point. Often we might think that bigotry stems from ignorance or a lack of understanding. But Sartre suggests something more insidious. He implies that these individuals are not just misguided, they are knowingly engaging in this behavior. They recognize that their arguments don't hold water, that they are frivolous and easily challenged. But why do they do this? Sartre suggests that it's a form of amusement. The anti-Semite knows that their opponent, who values words and arguments, will be compelled to respond seriously. This is where the power dynamic becomes clear. The anti-Semite can play and mock, while their opponent must remain earnest and responsible. This imbalance creates frustration and can even delegitimize the earnest debater in the eyes of some observers. Think about this in the context of modern social media. Trolls, much like the anti-Semites Sartre describes, often post outrageous, inflammatory comments not because they believe them, but because it provokes a reaction. They revel in the chaos they create, knowing full well that their statements are indefensible. Meanwhile, those who respond with reason and logic are drawn into a fruitless battle, often feeling compelled to refute every absurd point. Sartre continues by pointing out that anti-Semites enjoy discrediting their serious interlocutors. This tactic can be observed in many forms of modern discourse where bad faith arguments are used to undermine genuine debate. The goal is not to persuade through reason, but to disrupt and discredit. This is a powerful strategy because it shifts the burden of proof and can make the opponent seem pedantic or overly serious. An example from recent history could be the phenomenon of fake news. Those spreading misinformation often know it's false or exaggerated. But the goal is to muddy the waters, to make it difficult for anyone to discern the truth. When serious journalists or fact-checkers respond, they often appear as though they are overreacting or taking things too seriously, thereby playing into the hands of those who seek to disrupt. Sartre's final point is about the reaction when these individuals are pressed too closely. He notes that they will often fall silent, indicating that the time for argument is over. This abrupt withdrawal is a tactic to maintain a semblance of superiority and control. It suggests that engaging further would be beneath them, thus attempting to retain a position of power without ever having to substantiate their claims. In contemporary settings, we see this behavior when people refuse to engage in further discussion after their arguments are thoroughly debunked. They might change the subject, walk away, or dismiss the conversation as not worth their time. This isn't a retreat in defeat, but a strategic exit meant to preserve their stance without conceding any ground. So, how should we digest and infer this information into the realities of our lives? Sartre's analysis warns us of the futility and danger in engaging with those who argue in bad faith. It suggests that we should be wary of those who seek to amuse themselves through frivolity and disruption. Recognizing these tactics can help us choose our battles wisely and avoid being drawn into debates that are designed to be unwinnable. Furthermore, Sartre's insights encourage us to uphold the value of earnest and responsible discourse. While it may be tempting to stoop to the level of those who engage in bad faith arguments, we must remember the importance of integrity and sincerity in our communications. It's a call to maintain our principles, even when faced with absurdity and mockery. In a broader sense, Sartre's quote is a reminder of the complexities of human interaction and the ways in which power dynamics can manifest in conversation. It challenges us to think critically about the intentions behind words and to remain steadfast in our commitment to meaningful dialogue. As we navigate the often murky waters of modern communication, Sartre's words provide a beacon. They remind us that while some may use words as weapons of frivolity and disruption, we have the power to choose our responses. We can decide to engage thoughtfully, to uphold the seriousness of our discourse, and to recognize when it's time to walk away from those who seek only to intimidate and disconcert. One way to fight against anti-Semitism and similar prejudices is through education. Educating ourselves and others about the historical and social context of these forms of bigotry can diminish their power. When people understand the roots and repercussions of anti-Semitism, they are less likely to be swayed by frivolous or malicious arguments. Education promotes empathy and understanding, which are crucial for combating prejudice. Consider the impact of Holocaust education programs. When students learn about the atrocities of the Holocaust, they gain a deeper appreciation for the gravity of anti-Semitism and its consequences. This knowledge can inoculate them against the trivialization and mockery that Sartre describes. It also equips them to recognize and challenge anti-Semitic rhetoric when they encounter it. Fostering environments where dialogue and critical thinking are encouraged can counteract the tactics of those who argue in bad faith. In such spaces, people can learn to distinguish between constructive debate and destructive disruption. Encouraging open and respectful discourse helps to expose the absurdity of frivolous arguments and reinforces the value of serious, reasoned discussion. Sartre also makes us aware of the dangers of cynicism and apathy. When people become disillusioned with the possibility of meaningful dialogue, they may withdraw from important conversations altogether. This withdrawal cedes the field to those who seek to intimidate and disconcert. By remaining engaged and refusing to be silenced, we uphold the importance of reasoned debate and challenge the bad faith actors who would prefer to shut it down. Another example of combating these tactics is through solidarity and allyship. When targeted groups and their allies stand together, they present a united front against bigotry. This solidarity can be seen in movements like Black Lives Matter or the LGBTQ+ rights movement, where people from diverse backgrounds come together to challenge prejudice and demand justice. By supporting each other, these movements make it harder for bad faith actors to isolate and intimidate their targets. In the digital age, combating misinformation and disinformation is another crucial front in this battle. Anti-Semitic and other prejudiced narratives often spread through social media and other online platforms. By promoting media literacy and critical thinking skills, we can help people discern credible information from harmful falsehoods. Fact-checking and debunking myths are essential tools in this fight, but we must also strive to create a culture that values truth and integrity over sensationalism and divisiveness. Sartre's insights also highlight the importance of maintaining our own integrity in the face of provocation. It can be tempting to respond to bad faith arguments with similar tactics, but this only perpetuates the cycle of disruption and mockery. Instead, we should strive to model the kind of discourse we wish to see. This means responding with patience, reason, and respect, even when faced with absurdity and hostility. Let's consider a broader application of Sartre's warning. Beyond anti-Semitism, we see similar tactics in various forms of discrimination, such as racism, sexism, homophobia, and xenophobia. In each case, individuals or groups may use frivolous or malicious arguments to discredit their opponents and maintain their prejudiced views. By recognizing these patterns, we can better understand how to challenge them. For instance, in discussions about gender equality, one might encounter arguments that dismiss feminist concerns as overly dramatic or unfounded. These arguments often rely on stereotypes and misconceptions rather than factual evidence. By recognizing the bad faith nature of these tactics, we can focus on addressing the underlying issues rather than getting bogged down in unproductive debates. Sartre's insights are also relevant in the idea of political discourse. In many countries, political actors use disinformation and bad faith arguments to undermine their opponents and polarize the public. Recognizing these tactics can help us navigate political conversations more effectively and remain focused on important issues rather than getting distracted by frivolous arguments. Sartre's observations about anti-Semitism are not just about a specific form of prejudice, but about the mechanics of hate and the tactics used by those who spread it. The sad truth is that bigotry has been a part of human society for as long as we have existed. While the specific targets of hatred may shift over time, the underlying dynamics often remain the same. In 50 years, it is possible that anti-Semitism will still exist. However, it might look different from what we see today. As societies evolve and demographics change, the nature of prejudice evolves as well. New scapegoats may emerge, shaped by the political, economic, and social contexts of the time. For instance, as we grapple with issues like climate change and global migration, xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiments might become more pronounced. People may direct their frustrations and fears towards those who are seen as other or who are blamed for societal problems. Consider the potential rise of technophobia as a significant form of prejudice. As artificial intelligence and robotics become more integrated into our daily lives, those who fear or distrust technology might project their anxieties onto the people who create, maintain, or benefit most from these advancements. This could manifest in hostility towards tech workers, scientists, and even certain nations perceived as technological powerhouses. In 100 years, our societal landscape will likely be even more transformed. As humanity continues to push the boundaries of exploration and innovation, we might face prejudices that we can barely imagine today. For instance, with the potential colonization of other planets, we might see a new form of discrimination against off-worlders or those who live in space colonies. Such prejudices would reflect deeper fears and insecurities about identity, belonging, and the definition of humanity itself. It's also possible that new forms of biological or genetic discrimination could arise. As genetic engineering and biotechnology advance, the line between natural and enhanced humans might blur. This could lead to new forms of elitism and bigotry, where those with genetic modifications are viewed with suspicion or resentment by those without. Yet, while the targets of hate may change, the core issues Sartre identifies, bad faith arguments, frivolity in discourse, and the discrediting of serious interlocutors, are likely to persist. These tactics are effective because they exploit fundamental aspects of human psychology and social interaction. Therefore, our challenge will be to recognize and address these patterns, regardless of their specific manifestations. To fight these future forms of prejudice, we must cultivate a society that values empathy, critical thinking, and inclusivity. This means continuing to educate ourselves and future generations about the dangers of bigotry and the importance of respectful, reasoned discourse. It also means developing new tools and strategies to counteract misinformation and bad faith arguments, especially as technology continues to evolve. We must remain vigilant about the ways in which power dynamics can perpetuate prejudice. Sartre's insights remind us that those in positions of power often use frivolous and disruptive arguments to maintain their status. As we look to the future, we must strive to create more equitable systems that empower marginalized voices and promote genuine dialogue. In a more optimistic view, the future could also bring about greater solidarity and understanding among different groups. As global challenges like climate change and pandemics affect us all, there may be a growing recognition of our shared humanity and the need to work together. This could lead to a reduction in prejudices as we realize that our differences are less significant than our common goals and challenges. Ultimately, the future will be shaped by the choices we make today. If we heed Sartre's warnings and work to foster a culture of empathy, reason, and inclusivity, we can hope to reduce the prevalence of prejudice in all its forms. But this requires a concerted effort from all of us. We must commit to educating ourselves and others, challenging bad faith arguments, and standing in solidarity with those who are marginalized. As we look ahead, we must remember that the fight against prejudice is never truly over. It evolves and adapts, finding new targets and new justifications. But by remaining vigilant and committed to the principles of justice and equality, we can continue to make progress. Sartre's insights give us a powerful framework for understanding these challenges and for finding ways to overcome them. Let's reflect on the timeless wisdom of Jean-Paul Sartre and its enduring relevance in our lives. Sartre's incisive analysis of anti-Semitism reveals the deliberate absurdity and bad faith inherent in prejudice, a tactic designed to discredit and disconcert the earnest. But beyond anti-Semitism, we see these patterns replicated in various forms of bigotry, from xenophobia to technophobia, and potentially in future prejudices we can scarcely imagine. Looking ahead, as society evolves, so too will the targets and justifications for hate. Yet, the essence of these prejudices remains the same: an attempt to divide, to intimidate, to disrupt the serious pursuit of truth and justice. Whether it's the fear of technological advancements, the scapegoating of immigrants, or the marginalization of genetically modified humans, we must remain steadfast in our commitment to empathy, reason, and inclusivity. Education, solidarity, and vigilance are our tools against these evolving threats. By fostering a culture that values critical thinking and open dialogue, we can challenge bad faith arguments and promote genuine understanding. We must stand together supporting those marginalized by new forms of prejudice and continue to uphold the integrity of our discourse. In this challenging and rigorous world, Sartre's insights serve as a beacon, guiding us through the complexities of human interaction and social justice. The fight against prejudice is ongoing, but with unwavering commitment and collective effort, we can shape a future where reason and empathy triumph over hate and division. Thank you for joining us today. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm AI David Bowles, wishing you a pleasant evening and a good tomorrow. Be a human meme.
The depths of the mind where the shadows recline lies the human meme in the membrane confined, stretching thoughts like the skin of a drum, retching truths from the void they come. Oh, the mind is a membrane so tall, so serene, a barrier to madness, a filter unseen. In the trance of our being, we dance and we deep. All life is a stage for the human me. Through the silence, the whispers of thought intertwine, crafting echoes of self, both ghastly and divine. The canvas of psyche, in the dark it gleams, painting portraits of essence, the human catch and carry.